Now let's take a deeper look into variables. What is a variable and what types of variables are there? We've already defined what is a variable. It is a characteristic of an observation. But now we're going to talk about what types of variables there are. There are two main types of variables that we ever deal with. They can be quantitative or qualitative. Now there are other words that we can use. Quantitative would mean it's numerical. It represents numbers. You can take an average, and that average will make sense. I'll explain more on that one in a second. Um, just know that not all numbers are necessarily quantitative. But generally, a quantitative variable is a numerical value, and you can take an average, and that average makes sense. Qualitative, another word for this is categorical, meaning you can separate everybody in your sample into groups or categories. So it's a way of splitting or dividing your population or your sample into groups. That's really what a categorical variable does. Sometimes this can be numerical and you can take an average, but that average will not make sense. All right. Now, here's a personal preference of mine. Quantitative and qualitative are really close to each other, very, very similar in word. So generally, I call them quantitative and categorical. So moving forward, that's how I'm going to refer to them as quantitative variables and categorical variables. All right, let's see if we've got this. I want you to take these variables here, pause the video, and determine, are each of these quantitative or categorical? Based on the definition I just gave you, pause the video and decide which of these variables are quantitative, which are categorical. All right, now that you've paused the video and you've made these decisions, let's go through these. Age. Well, if I have a bunch of people in a room and I ask their ages, can I find the average age of people in the room? Yes, absolutely. It's a number and you can take an average. Perfect. All right, grade level. Sorry, I should finish that. So since we can take an average, it's numerical, it's quantitative. Grade level. So by grade level, we're talking freshman, sophomore, junior, senior. What grade level are you in school? All right. Can we take an average? No, we can't. What's the purpose of identifying a grade level? Well, it's separating everybody into groups. Everybody in 9th grade is a freshman. Everybody in 10th grade is a sophomore. Everyone in 11th grade is a junior. Everyone in 12th grade is a senior. So grade level is categorizing people. So that is a categorical variable. The value of a house. What is your house worth? Well, that's a monetary value. If I take your house and I take my house, can I find the average price? Sure, I could. That may not necessarily be anything meaningful, but if you go to a neighborhood and find the average cost of a house in a neighborhood, that does make sense. So since you can take an average, it is a quantitative variable. What about eye color? Blue eyes, green eyes, brown eyes, hazel eyes. That's not numerical, so you can't take an average of it. Rather, it distinguishes one person from another. Blue eyes and brown eyes, they are separate. It categorizes them, puts them in different groups. So it's a categorical variable. What about your GPA, your grade point average? Well, for those who may not know what a GPA is, you take your grade and give it a number. For example, an A would be worth 4 points. A B would be worth 3 points. A C is worth 2 points. And you take all of your grades, give them those numerical values, and it's a grade point average. So you take all of those point values and you average them together. So if you have, we'll say 2 B's and an A is 4, 2 B's would be 3 each. So 3 plus 3 is 6, plus 4 is 10. Divided by 3, you get a 3.33 GPA. All right, so that's what GPA is. It's numerical, and it is by definition an average, so it's most definitely quantitative. Zip code. We'll do the same thing we did with age. We'll take a room full of people and we ask everybody's zip codes, their numbers. So it's looking like we can do something with this. We take an average of those zip codes. We can do that, not a problem. But what does that average mean? That average has no meaning. What's our average zip code? It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't give us any information. So that would be a categorical variable. And that makes sense because one particular zip code is talking about one group of people. Another zip code is talking about another group of people, and so on. So zip codes are meant to categorize or group people into areas. Again, here's the takeaway. If you can take an average and that average makes sense, then it's going to be quantitative. If instead the variable is intended to separate people into groups, then it would be a categorical variable. All right, in our next sublesson, we're going to talk about specifically quantitative variables because we can divide quantitative variables even further. And then after that, we'll talk about levels of measurement. We'll see you guys in the next lesson.